In the spring of 2003, a discovery in a Chinese cave threatened to fundamentally rewrite human history as we know it today. Yet, just 3 weeks before its scheduled publication, this groundbreaking study abruptly vanished from the pages of major Western academic journals. This is the true, suppressed account of why those findings were systematically deemed unfit for the public record and what they actually revealed. It all began when a dedicated team of geneticists, operating from a modest, dimly lit laboratory in Hanjo, China, initiated a series of critical tests. Their primary focus was a collection of ancient bone samples, painstakingly recovered from a complex, hidden cave system nestled within the southwestern mountains. These samples were exceptionally old. Radiocarbon dating placed their age at approximately 40,000 years before the present, deep within the Pleistocene epoch. At first, the team's objective was seemingly routine: to simply identify common population genetic markers from the extracted DNA to confirm existing theories. Such data was fully expected to illuminate the known migratory pathways, settlement patterns, and intermixing dynamics of early human populations across East Asia. Researchers believe this genetic sequencing would neatly help construct a clearer historical picture, perfectly aligning with the textbook narratives we are all taught. However, after 18 months of rigorous, exhausting analysis, the results they finally unearthed completely defied every single established model of human evolution. The DNA successfully extracted from these specific cave samples revealed genetic signatures that, according to prevailing scientific understanding, simply should not have existed. These unique markers shouldn't have been present in any human population at that specific latitude during that particular period or via any acknowledged migration route. And this wasn't a fluke. These signatures were not only distinct, but were consistently repeated across multiple samples, unequivocally ruling out any laboratory contamination. Instead, the data undeniably pointed to a population of anatomically modern humans thriving in southern China at a time that shocked the researchers. They possessed a complex genetic profile that the standard, widely accepted model of human origins absolutely and categorically could not accommodate or explain away. The lead scientist on this groundbreaking project dutifully submitted his astonishing findings to a prominent international journal in early 2005. The paper subsequently navigated the incredibly demanding peer review process, was formally accepted, and even slated for publication. Yet, in a completely unprecedented move, the paper was abruptly withdrawn just 3 weeks before its scheduled release. The official explanation was paper-thin. The journal cited vague, unspecified, additional questions from reviewers concerning the dating methodology. But the subsequent actions revealed the true institutional panic. In a highly telling, coordinated move, the lead scientist was suddenly reassigned to an entirely different research group within his institution. His co-authors received explicit, threatening instructions to refrain from discussing the project. The critical bone samples themselves were immediately relocated. They were transferred to a separate, highly secure facility for further analysis and were never, ever made publicly available for independent verification again. To fully grasp the inherent, absolute danger posed by these suppressed Hanjo findings, one must first comprehend the established academic model they so fundamentally contradicted. The standard model of human origins, which forms the bedrock of every introductory anthropology course in the West, is known as the out of Africa model. According to this widely, fiercely protected paradigm, anatomically modern humans first evolved in Africa approximately 200,000 years ago, completely replacing all other species. But this particular model possesses several inherent characteristics that prove highly advantageous to the political and ideological institutions responsible for its promulgation. It elegantly establishes a single, unambiguous origin point for all modern human populations, firmly situating this origin within a specific, politically safe geographic location. Crucially, it holds the immense benefit of being broadly compatible with the political and ideological assumptions heavily prevalent within the late 20th century Western academic establishment. It was an era particularly keen on aggressively emphasizing the fundamental unity of the human species and portraying all regional differences as both recent and superficial. By the early 2000s, this model was widely regarded as settled science, an absolute, immutable truth, and anyone who dared to challenge it was scientifically destroyed. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, this model was aggressively solidified by a series of mitochondrial DNA studies that became academic gospel. These studies claimed to perfectly trace all female lineages back to a singular African ancestor, firmly cementing the oversimplified textbook narrative. Consequently, any individual who dared to challenge this consensus in a prominent academic forum was typically met with absolute derision. They were systematically dismissed by hiring committees and grant panels as either intellectually ignorant or worse, politically suspect. The fundamental issue, however, was that the system couldn't suppress reality forever. The data was beginning to leak. The mounting genetic and archaeological evidence accumulating throughout the 2000s and 2010s was increasingly failing to support the simplistic out-of-Africa model. Instead, it pointed towards a reality that was far stranger, infinitely more complex, and deeply rooted in the Eurasian continent. This accumulating evidence suggested a picture where multiple, distinct human populations had been traversing Eurasia for a considerably longer duration than allowed. It depicted continuous and intricate interbreeding between these diverse populations, completely destroying the simplistic theory of total replacement. The first massive, undeniable public crack in this entrenched consensus appeared with the groundbreaking sequencing of the Neanderthal genome in 2010. Researchers made the startling discovery that all non-African modern human populations carry between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. This was not a minor revelation. It directly contradicted the strict model, which had largely depicted modern humans replacing Neanderthals without any significant interbreeding. The magnitude of this finding forced the academic community to acknowledge it. However, this acknowledgement was meticulously, strategically framed by the institutions. The Neanderthal admixture was carefully characterized as a small and largely incidental component, merely a brief, limited episode of contact occurring in the Middle East. This specific, cynical framing ingeniously preserved the fundamental structure of their consensus model, while ostensibly appearing to accommodate the new, challenging data. Then, before the establishment could fully secure their newly patched narrative, came another massive, undeniable revelation from the freezing depths of Siberia: the Denisovans. In 2010, researchers analyzing a single, unassuming fragment of a finger bone unearthed from a cave in the Altai Mountains, dated to 40,000 years ago, identified an entirely unknown population of archaic humans. They exhibited genetic similarities to Neanderthals, but were unequivocally genetically a distinct and separate population. Their genome, successfully sequenced from that solitary bone, revealed a substantial genetic contribution to the modern populations of East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Oceania. Remarkably, some modern Melanesian populations carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA, a staggering figure that completely shatters the myth of pure, isolated lineages. Furthermore, Tibetan populations exhibit highly distinctive Denisovan-derived genetic adaptations, most notably a unique variant of the EPAS1 gene, conferring a crucial survival advantage at high altitudes. The Denisovan discovery, much like the Neanderthal findings, did not utterly demolish the out-of-Africa consensus overnight, but it certainly complicated it beyond recognition. It provided hard, sequencing evidence that multiple archaic human populations had been widely dispersed across Eurasia long before the timeline stipulated by the standard migration model. Crucially, it proved that the modern East Asian gene pool incorporated ancient components derived directly from these older populations, not solely from recent African migrants. And this is precisely where the dark significance of suppressed research becomes acutely relevant to understanding the academic matrix we currently live under. Because while the Denisovan finding was officially announced in a controlled, carefully managed manner by major Western research institutions, the exact same treatment was categorically not extended to the findings of smaller, independent research groups working on remarkably similar samples, using similar techniques years earlier. Consider the Hanjo team. Back in 2003, a full 7 years prior, they had been uncovering remarkably similar evidence in those southwestern Chinese cave samples. Their suppressed samples contain genetic markers pointing to populations that unequivocally did not fit the narrative, establishing connections to deeper, older Eurasian lineages. Their findings were summarily withdrawn and erased. The Denisovan findings, emerging years later under Western supervision, were widely celebrated. The difference wasn't the science, but there is more to this pattern of suppression. In 2017, a team published a highly anticipated study of samples retrieved from Tianyuan Cave near Beijing. These remains were dated to approximately 40,000 years ago. Unsurprisingly, the published study was, once again, meticulously and strategically framed by the academic establishment. It neatly portrayed the Tianyuan individual as a straightforward, early modern human ancestor of contemporary East Asian populations, fitting perfectly into the allowed narrative. What the published version judiciously avoided emphasizing, yet what the underlying raw genetic data unequivocally revealed, was something entirely different and incredibly dangerous. The Tianyuan individual possessed distinct genetic components that simply did not originate from the out-of-Africa migration timeline, as conventionally dated by textbooks. These anomalous components strongly indicated a vastly deeper, far more complex history of human populations traversing East Asia than the consensus model was prepared to acknowledge. While the lead authors carefully sidestepped drawing this obvious conclusion, the underlying raw data, buried deep in supplementary materials, empowered independent researchers to look closer. Several independent geneticists did exactly that, but their subsequent follow-up papers, revealing the deep lineages, were conspicuously rejected by every major Western scientific journal. Instead, they were relegated to smaller, less prominent venues, where they failed to penetrate the broader public conversation, effectively silencing the debate entirely. Then, in 2019, an even more astonishing finding emerged from ancient bone samples recovered deep within the Altai region of Siberia, dating back 90,000 years. These samples originated from a single individual whose mother was definitively Neanderthal and whose father was unequivocally Denisovan, a direct first-generation hybrid. While this singular discovery was published, what received considerably less emphasis in the public coverage was its broader, paradigm-shattering implication for Eurasian history. The very existence of a Neanderthal-Denisovan hybrid at that ancient date indicated that these two populations were not geographically separated and genetically isolated as previously taught. On the contrary, they were in regular contact, actively interacting across the vast Eurasian steppe, and crucially, producing offspring for tens of thousands of years. This means the modern East Asian gene pool harbors the legacy of a deeply intertwined history of interbreeding that current Western textbooks categorically refuse to acknowledge. So, what precisely does all of this suppressed genetic data have to do with Tartaria? What connection does it bear to revisionist economic history? It has absolutely everything to do with it. Because the genetic evidence constitutes merely one crucial piece of a much grander, more expansive picture. That picture is of a profound, deep continental history across northern and central Eurasia that the modern academic establishment has steadfastly refused to fully acknowledge. The maps produced in the 17th and 18th centuries, which boldly labeled vast territories of Inner Asia as Tartaria, were pointing to a genuine demographic reality. The enduring architecture found in those territories, the massive inherited star fortifications scattered across the landscape, the inexplicably buried and subsequently reused ancient city foundations, and the compelling linguistic evidence of older substrate languages, all of it cumulatively points to a continuous and remarkably complex human presence across northern Eurasia, stretching back tens of thousands of years. The genetic evidence, when finally allowed to enter the public conversation, powerfully confirms what these older historical sources and traditions have been asserting all along. The vast territories that the modern academy now dismissively labels Siberia, Mongolia, Central Asia, and East Asia were emphatically not empty wildernesses. Instead, they were home to highly stratified, layered populations with long-standing histories and deep roots across the continent. Populations whose biological and cultural heritage was systematically reinterpreted, erased, and reshaped throughout the late 19th and 20th centuries to conform to a new narrative. This modern academic narrative, in its broad structural design, served a very specific purpose. It strategically located the origin of humanity far away in Africa, a continent where the colonial powers of the late 19th century had significant vested interests in establishing a sympathetic and highly convenient origin story. It conveniently portrayed the populations of Inner Asia as recent arrivals and derivative cultures, a classification that neatly aligned with the imperial ambitions of the Russian and British empires. To achieve this, the establishment summarily dismissed the valuable insights from older travel literature, more ancient cartography, and indigenous traditions as mere folklore. Garbage. The Hanjo team, back in 2003, was on the absolute precipice of publishing data that would have initiated the first massive cracks in this meticulously constructed lie. They possessed hard genetic evidence of ancient populations in southern China that fundamentally did not fit the established out-of-Africa migration timeline. This data would have sparked a fundamental conversation, and the institutional gatekeepers were simply, brutally unwilling to permit that conversation to ever begin. In the years that followed, similar acts of containment recurred. Take a 2014 study examining Y chromosome lineages in Central Asian populations. It uncovered anomalous markers strongly indicating a much older, continuous male lineage history in the region than the standard model ever allowed for. Although published in a tiny, obscure journal, it was deliberately ignored by major outlets and practically blacklisted from broader academic discourse. Then came another highly controversial analysis in 2018, focusing heavily on mitochondrial DNA extracted from ancient samples found in the Tarim Basin. It identified unique female lineages that connected directly to populations the official textbooks had never previously associated with that specific region. This study was indeed published, but its discussion section was meticulously framed by editors to scrupulously avoid directly challenging the sacred consensus. However, the underlying raw data was leaked in the appendix, allowing independent researchers to pursue directions the original authors were terrified to touch. Most recently, a 2021 analysis of ancient DNA from samples collected in the Mongolian steppe identified something absolutely terrifying to the academic establishment. They cautiously described a previously unrecognized Northeast Asian deep lineage, clearly present in samples dating back at least 15,000 years. While formally published, its profound implications for the deep population history of Eurasia were conspicuously muted, deliberately buried under layers of dense academic jargon. What we ultimately possess in the accumulated genetic record of the past 2 decades is a substantial, undeniable, and overwhelming body of evidence. Evidence that consistently points toward a deeper, older, and significantly more complex human history in Eurasia than the existing consensus model can possibly survive. This represents the standard pattern of modern epistemic management. It is not some crude, conspiratorial plot orchestrated by a single, shadowy authority in a smoke-filled room. Instead, it is a highly sophisticated institutional system, one that diligently produces a tightly managed consensus through the cumulative, crushing effect of countless individual decisions made by editors, peer reviewers, hiring committees, and grant panels. Each of these individual decisions, taken on its own administrative merits, can often be rationally, legally defended by the institution. However, the aggregate effect of these thousands of minor decisions is the systematic production of a public narrative that consistently misrepresents the underlying evidence. The system is not centrally coordinated by any single dictator. It is simply the natural outcome of a toxic academic culture, a culture in which certain historical conclusions are inherently, politically, and professionally costly to support. The Hanjo study from 2003 is merely one poignant example. When contacted by an independent journalist in 2017, the lead researcher politely but fearfully declined to comment on his original groundbreaking findings. He had by then transitioned into an entirely different, mundane area of corporate research. The spark of discovery completely extinguished from his eyes. His co-authors had similarly dispersed into other, unrelated fields. The institution successfully atomized the team, neutralizing the collective threat they posed. As for the evidence, the original bone samples remain firmly in Western institutional custody and have never been released for independent analysis. The withdrawn paper itself has not been recovered or revisited. The institutional vault swallowed it whole, perfectly preserving the accepted paradigm. The revolutionary data now exists only in the fading, traumatized memories of the researchers who painstakingly worked on it decades ago, and in whatever private, encrypted notes they may have secretly retained, hidden away from the prying eyes of their departmental oversight committees. In another decade or two, once that original Hanjo team has retired or passed away, that crucial data will be, effectively, gone forever. At that exact point in time, the institutional system will have successfully, quietly, and entirely completed its invisible administrative work without any public awareness. The perceived threat of the 2003 Hanjo anomaly will have been fully and permanently contained, locked away behind endless layers of bureaucratic red tape. The general public, meanwhile, will confidently continue to receive the safely sanitized, oversimplified textbook version of human history in every major classroom. And the profound, revolutionary question of what was actually contained within those specific Chinese cave samples, what they genuinely demonstrated about deep population history, will have been quietly, methodically, and permanently removed from the realm of legitimate, funded academic inquiry for generations to come, buried under decades of dust. This, then, is the precise, highly calculated mechanism by which the modern institutional system manages human knowledge and strictly controls the historical narrative. It is emphatically not achieved through dramatic, overt acts of suppression that would draw unwanted public attention, congressional hearings, or mass media outrage. Instead, it operates completely invisibly through the crushing, accumulated weight of myriad small, seemingly administrative, and entirely boring routine decisions made behind closed doors. Minor laboratory reassignments, subtle editorial reversals at journals, discrete grant denials from funding panels, and slight, highly discouraging career adjustments for young researchers. Each individual incident is deliberately designed by the gatekeepers to be too minor, too perfectly unremarkable, to ever provoke any widespread academic outrage, protest, or investigation. Yet their massive aggregate effect is the relentless, brutal maintenance of a managed consensus that consistently fails to align with the underlying genetic evidence. This systematic maintenance is not always flawless, of course. Despite their best efforts, dangerous fragments of the truth occasionally, inevitably leak through the cracks. Independent, unfunded researchers sometimes succeed in publishing their localized, fragmented findings in smaller, much less scrutinized academic venues far from the Ivy League. And the raw, unedited genetic data, in its inexorable, undeniable accumulation across global servers over the decades, may eventually compel the rigid consensus to grudgingly revise itself. But make no mistake about it, the timeline of such institutional revision is intentionally glacial, painfully slow, meticulously designed to outlive the original dissenting whistleblowers. The genetic evidence we've just examined, therefore, represents only one crucial thread in a much grander, far more complex tapestry of suppressed human history. A biological thread that inextricably connects various historical, archaeological, and architectural anomalies across the globe into a single, cohesive, and frankly, terrifying picture. Because when we finally step out of the sterile, locked laboratories and actually look at the physical landscape of northern and central Eurasia, we immediately find monumental physical anomalies built into the Earth itself that perfectly match the exact suppressed DNA timelines the establishment tried to destroy. Let's examine the surviving cartographic record. The highly detailed official maps produced in the 17th and 18th centuries by early Western explorers and merchants, boldly and consistently labeled vast, supposedly completely empty territories of Inner Asia under a singular, unified, and now forbidden geopolitical name: Tartaria. Modern university academics will desperately dismiss this as a mere geographic placeholder, a lazy term used by confused cartographers for an unknown, empty wilderness. But these authentic maps detailed hundreds of complex walled cities, extensive continental trade routes, and firmly defined, heavily guarded political borders. You simply do not draw precise, topographical river systems and name specific provincial capitals for a mythical, non-existent placeholder. It was a real empire. And then there is the undeniable physical architecture left behind in the dirt. I'm talking about the massive, inherited, geographically impossible star fortifications. Scattered across the entire Eurasian continent, perfectly geometric, massive star-shaped forts are found completely abandoned, often partially buried deep in the mud and earth. From the deep Siberian taiga all the way to the edges of the Caspian Sea, these colossal structures share an identical, highly advanced mathematical design. Standard history textbooks lazily claim they were built by scattered, technologically limited nomadic tribes, or were simply later crude Russian colonial outposts. But the sheer logistical scale, the massive terraforming and earth-moving required, and the unified architectural vision completely defy this simplistic, frankly insulting explanation. These forts are the physical, immovable fingerprints of a continuous, highly advanced demographic reality that the suppressed genetic data is only now mathematically confirming. So if these colossal, mathematically perfect star forts were real, and they strategically span the entire Eurasian continent, the obvious, terrifying question becomes, who exactly lived inside them? And more importantly, where did that massive population go? To answer that, we have to look away from modern genetics for a moment and look at the brutal geopolitical realities of the 19th century. During this specific period, the Russian Empire aggressively expanded eastward across Siberia, while the British Empire simultaneously pushed northward from India. Modern history books romanticize this massive, continent-spanning imperial collision as the Great Game. But I assure you, it was not a game. It was a systematic, brutal campaign of erasure directed against the remnants of the populations that originally built and occupied those star fortifications. When the imperial armies arrived, they didn't just conquer empty land. They actively seized and repurposed the existing ancient infrastructure. They simply claimed the colossal star forts as their own newly built colonial outposts, completely rewriting the architectural origin story overnight on official maps. And the original, diverse populations, the direct descendants of the ancient, intertwined lineages we saw perfectly preserved in the suppressed DNA data, they were either forcefully assimilated, violently scattered across the frozen steppe, or systematically bureaucratically erased from the demographic record entirely. Their unified cultural identity was intentionally fractured into dozens of newly categorized, isolated ethnic groups by imperial administrators holding census pens. This is the true, bloody context that the simplistic out-of-Africa model was specifically politically designed to legitimize and cover up in the modern era. By claiming the continent was mostly empty or solely populated by recent migrants, the modern empires legally justified their massive territorial and cultural theft. And this is exactly why the 2003 Hanjo DNA study triggered such an immediate, terrified, and absolute institutional lockdown. Because that extracted DNA didn't just challenge an abstract evolutionary timeline, it threatened to physically, biologically prove the existence of the erased empire. This, ultimately, is the prevailing situation we find ourselves in today. The grand, meticulously maintained illusion of modern consensus history. The essential, groundbreaking research has already been diligently conducted by brave, isolated individuals like the Hanjo team and countless others. The critical data undeniably exists. It was sequenced, verified, and mapped out decades ago, buried deep within supplementary appendices. Its profound, earth-shattering implications are transparently clear to absolutely anyone willing to put in the agonizing hours to meticulously read the dry, highly technical literature, bypass the institutional gatekeepers entirely, and assemble the complete picture for themselves. But that requires stepping out of the matrix, because the public-facing narrative has been meticulously managed and fiercely guarded. It has been carefully contained, aggressively sanitized, and packaged into a neat, unthreatening version that belongs in a children's museum. A version that fundamentally, deliberately, and systematically does not reflect what the underlying genetic and archaeological science actually shows. The entire institutional system is meticulously designed to ensure one primary, overriding objective above all else: that we, the general public, remain entirely, blissfully unaware of these crucial, paradigm-shattering findings. They want you asleep. They don't want you asking difficult questions about the massive, highly sophisticated empire that continuously occupied Eurasia for millennia. They certainly don't want you connecting the anomalous biological DNA of modern populations to the buried megalithic architecture found in the dirt, because they know that if you pull hard enough on that single, suppressed genetic thread, the entire fabricated tapestry of modern geopolitics, imperial history, and institutional academic authority completely unravels. And that is a collapse of power that the men behind the desks will never, ever allow to happen peacefully. So where does that leave the physical evidence today? The irreplaceable bone samples from the southwestern Chinese cave system are presumably still held in deep institutional custody somewhere, locked away in a temperature-controlled vault. The raw research notes from the Hanjo team are, most likely, still sequestered in private files, hidden in a dusty attic or basement halfway across the world. The original, monumental publication draft, complete with its damning peer-review correspondence that proves the cover-up, exists solely within the highly restricted, impenetrable archives of the very journal that ultimately withdrew it. The hard reality is that absolutely none of these invaluable materials are currently publicly accessible. They belong to the establishment, nor are any of them likely to become publicly accessible in the foreseeable future. The vault is sealed. For all practical purposes, as far as the academic journals and the mainstream media are concerned, this particular story is definitively closed. Unless someone on the inside, at some future point, decides to commit academic suicide and bravely break the silence, the underlying revolutionary findings of the 2003 Hanjo study and all the others like it will officially remain unknown to the world. The simplified, politically safe textbook version of human origins will stubbornly persist, rolling off the printing presses year after year. The incredibly deep, complex history of East Asian and Eurasian populations will continue to be presented as a straightforward, single-file, out-of-Africa migration. It will be casually embellished only with minor, carefully managed archaic admixture components, buried in footnotes, just to placate the critics without changing the core lie. But the actual, far more intricate story, the terrifyingly complex reality that the raw genetic data has been consistently pointing to for a quarter century, will continue to be carefully managed at the absolute periphery, mentioned only in highly technical literature and never, ever fully assembled for the general public. The entire system is meticulously, flawlessly designed to ensure that we, the public, remain completely and blissfully unaware of these crucial, earth-shattering findings. They desperately want you to simply close the textbook, accept their sanitized, simplified narrative, and never look deeper into the shadows. But if this is the kind of in-depth, unauthorized, and dangerous investigation you actually came here for, then you already know exactly what action you need to take to fight back against the academic monopoly right now. Subscribe to the channel, build the network, become part of the underground resistance that refuses to blindly swallow their managed consensus. Share this video. Send this leaked data to absolutely anyone who is still willing to ask challenging questions about the scientific narratives we have been given. And keep your eyes open. Keep watching, because I promise you, there is so much more terrifying truth yet to come. The suppressed genetic evidence we've covered today is merely one single chapter in a massive, multi-generational cover-up. The deliberately buried archaeological record of Inner Asia represents another massive, completely unexplored piece of the puzzle. And the lost, physically impossible architectural patrimony of the Tartarian Empire forms yet another undeniable physical chapter they can't erase. We are systematically working through every single one of them, connecting the dots, one devastating revelation at a time. They desperately rely on our silence. They rely on our lazy compliance. But the more of us who steadfastly refuse to accept their managed consensus, the exponentially harder it becomes for the institutional gatekeepers to execute their next cover-up. We will make it impossible for the next forbidden study to simply vanish without a trace. The truth is out there. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next file. They thought they could bury the bones. They thought they could shred the data and rewrite the textbooks. They believed that if they controlled the academic institutions, they could permanently control human memory. But they made one fatal miscalculation in their grand architectural design of history. They forgot that while paper can be burned and scientists can be silenced, the earth itself cannot be completely erased. The massive stone foundations remain, and the blood remembers. The unbroken biological thread continues to quietly replicate inside billions of living people today. The men who built the consensus know this. They know the dam is breaking, and they are terrified of what happens when it fully collapses. This is your final warning to stop blindly accepting the history you were handed. Question the textbooks. Read the raw data, because history is not what happened. History is merely what survived the censorship. If you want to support this independent investigation, subscribe to the channel, share the file. The algorithm will try to bury this. Don't let them. Click the video on the screen right now to dive deep into the architectural impossibility of the Tartarian star forts. The evidence is waiting.